How's it going, my fellow kids? Books. You either read them or you don't. I'm one of those people that spent their childhood reading as much as possible. Didn't matter what it was. Everything from Go Dogs Go to The Hunger Games to Animorphs to Goosebumps and everything in between. I have a serious soft spot in my heart for books of pretty much every kind. That being said, not all books are created equal, and what inspired me to become a writer was my disdain for certain books and how authors could take a seemingly really cool prompt or idea and completely dig it headfirst in the ground with no chance of getting the air it needed to breathe. Case in point, I'm just going to leave this on screen. If you know, you know. Hi, my name's Professor. I'm an amateur author currently helping develop Season 2 of Murder Drones, written by me, produced by the fans here on my YouTube channel. If you're interested in stuff like that, subscribe, like the video, and stick around for more. This video, though, is going to be a little different because there are some stories. Speaking of, well, Murder Drones and its subsequent content, I remember reading some books as a kid that, despite being labeled as young adult, definitely felt like they were pushing the boundaries for what was acceptable for people whose frontal cortexes weren't fully developed yet to read, and what wasn't. Even things like Animorphs, which I still have a very soft spot for, despite its horrendous ending. Even that series had some very grotesque and violent moments where everything wasn't necessarily laid out in front of me, but it was definitely implied. And as a kid, I didn't have to exercise my imagination that much to see what was really going on. Characters lost limbs. Blood was splattered everywhere. Sometimes things were eaten, squished, squashed, torn apart. All of it in the name of what exactly? Entertainment, I guess? Visual storytelling? I don't know. But if you think Animorphs was the worst of the worst when it came to young adult books that really tried their darndest to be almost rated R, we'll say, boy, you haven't read anything yet, because I have two series in particular that have stuck with me ever since I finished reading them, that just felt like they were doing everything they could to reach that adult section, but were just there. They were like reaching for it, and then they saw all those crummy paperback romance novels, and they're like, nah, I'll stay here. I'll chill next to the Warriors books. I'm getting off subject here. Okay, let's talk about Skulduggery Pleasant. Written by a funny British man, Skulduggery Pleasant is the story of a supernatural skeleton detective who wields a couple revolvers, drives an old-fashioned car, and is the mentor to arguably the main character, a young girl who's just getting started in the fantastic, underground, dark world that is magical. Because of course it is. Skulduggery Pleasant is surprisingly funny, has awesome character interactions that are begging to be adapted to the big screen, and also features some of the most horrible moments I have ever read. And that's saying a lot. I read Watchmen, and I'm including that. Just because it's a comic book doesn't mean it's for kids. That's all I'm going to say. Overall, Skulduggery Pleasant is not the most violent series out there, but it does feature a few moments that, even in doing preparation for this video, I kind of had to stop and take a step back and go, wait, shoot, did they actually... This is for kids? And there's a lot of these moments. I'm just going to give you the top 2 or 3 that come to my mind. The first takes place in a moment in the story when the characters are in a house surrounded by zombies. One of the side characters, I guess, tries to walk over to the window and casually depict his experience regarding the undead. He says something to the effect of, "You guys don't have to worry, I've seen stuff like this before," and of course he gets too close and gets pulled through the window and eaten alive. It's pretty grotesque and par for the course if you're familiar with zombie content, but when you compare it with the rest of the Skulduggery Pleasant books, it kind of stands out a little bit. The other moment that I think is infinitely worse than that is when the bad guy of the first book, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, he basically resurrects an immortal homunculus that's meant to usher in the destruction of the world, as bad guys do. And in a moment of surprising tenderness, featuring a few mortal wounds, secured by our heroes, of course, or given by our heroes, I should say. I'm sorry, there's no script for this video. I'm just riffing. I want to get a video out before I start working full-time again. So anyway, this bad guy is looking at this homunculus and he apologizes to it as he's, bleeding out. And the homunculus, in a moment of surprising tenderness, reaches out to the side of his face, almost to apologize back, to say, it's all right, you did your best. And then it grabs his head and squishes it. And it's described. There's also a description of things exploding everywhere. And this was a book that you could find in elementary school libraries. Far from the worst thing there, but still. This series does hold a special place in my heart. I don't want to give the impression that I don't like it. I love this series. I love the humor. The characters are actually funny. And holy cow, the dark fantasy underground, it reminds me a lot of stories like The Crow, if you've seen the original film. Or just like, I guess, some Doctor Who elements. It's dark fantasy taking place in the background. There's characters that get frozen in stone because earth magic is 100% defense. There's characters that burn alive. Heck, one of the main characters, the character who the series is named after, Skulduggery Pleasant, he's a skeleton, a living skeleton. And the way he became that, when you figure that out, oh man, it's dark. Certainly not the worst thing I've ever read, but definitely a little much for somebody who was still trying to figure out what kind of books they enjoyed reading. And oh man, if Skulduggery Pleasant was a little dark for me, then Wereworld was like that level of darkness taken to the extreme. Fun fact, the author of Wereworld is also the guy who's directly responsible for the creation of Bob the Builder. That is not a joke. You can fact check me on that. I'm not kidding. The author of Wereworld is the creator of Bob the Builder. I'm blown away. I'm genuinely blown away. That would be like the person who created Dragon Tales going on to write, I don't know, well, we'll say The Crow. How about that? I already brought it up. But yeah, it would be like if the person who was responsible for your favorite shows on PBS Kids, going on later in life to produce something that was so dark and so violent that it would make any concerned parent join the PTA in a heartbeat. Wereworld is the awesome high fantasy story of a world similar to ours, a little bit more on the fantasy side, where prominent figures across society can, have a werewolf-like transformation into a variety of animals. In fact, a silver werewolf is considered to be the rarest of these were creatures in the entire series. As far as we know, at least at the beginning of the story, there's only one of these silver werewolves left. You've got things like were sharks, were lobsters, were lions, were rats, were jaguars, were bears, were boars, and of course, were insects. There's also were dragons, potentially, but I don't want to spoil anything beyond that. You've probably heard what are they called? Narnia. I almost said the Legend of Narnia. That's not it. The Chronicles of Narnia. You've probably heard of those movies being described as Lord of the Rings for kids. Wereworld is actually Lord of the Rings for kids. I'm not even kidding. The world, the characters, it's all very well thought out. And again, it comes from the guy who made Bob the Builder, which is hysterical. But the reason I'm speaking about it in this video is because Wereworld features some of the most interesting and I would say cinematic yet brutal and violent moments that I've ever read in a book series before, and that includes Skulduggery Pleasant. There is a moment in this series where a character kills his own father as the character is a king, that the kid is killing the king, his father. At one point, as he's basically eating him alive. The king's crown falls off his head and rolls over to one of the supporting characters, who picks up the bloody crown and hands it off to the prince, now king, as his father's corpse makes a mess everywhere. And it's described much more elegantly than I've put it, but oh my gosh, this series, and we're not even going to talk about the were-rats. Just have some discernment about you, okay? Go into these worlds knowing that the authors barely held back. They held back in certain areas, like focusing on the characters around the violent scene that's happening, which I think is a great form of storytelling. But ultimately,
man, that guy sure does like talking, doesn't he? Well, while he's finishing up that, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, guys, that Murder Drones Season 2 Episode 5 isn't out yet. I'm currently waiting on a couple of key individuals who know who they are to finish their assignments before we can get Episode 5 out. Once they're done with their stuff, whomever they might be, I'll be able to edit everything together and give you guys that next episode. But I want to thank everyone who's volunteered to help, whether as a voice actor or an artist, whether you've come onto the team or not. I'm just grateful for all of you. You've done such an amazing job. Everybody has. And I'm so grateful that this has gone from a little fun story that I was doing to a community project. Like, I cannot believe all the love and support we're getting. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I promise episode 5 is coming out soon. As soon as here, let me do the thing. I'm sorry. It's wait, no, he's like this. I'm deeply sorry. It's coming out soon. I'm trying not to throw my headphones off my head. Episode 5 is coming. Okay, I promise. It's on its way. How do you end videos again?